Hello there and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with the community experts about their life journeys and learn from each other. And today we have a conversation with Aaron White, a trivia nerd, an avid runner, a community and communications professional with 20 years of experience who believes in openness and transparency and has learned to be comfortable revealing in his love of geeky things. So, hello, Aaron.
Hi, Yuri.
I have this, like I told you before the recording that I wanted to talk to you so much. Here we are, finally. Thank you very much for your time. And the first question, have you ever driven a lawn mower to visit your neighbor?
Ever driven? No, I have not personally actually ever driven a lawnmower at all. I see in my small town lots of people driving lawnmowers from place to place, but I personally have never attempted that.
So fun. Where do they go usually?
I've never followed anybody.
Why?
I've wondered the same thing. I imagine it's just down to the grocery store or to a friend's house or something like that. I wouldn't imagine you would take a lawnmower very far, but who knows? It's a mystery.
Didn't you ever have this like lawnmower parade or something like that when different neighbors are, driving together like these bikers do sometimes? Have you ever seen that?
I would love to see that. I think I should organize that and just say, let's have a lawnmower parade. If that happens, I will absolutely post it somewhere because that sounds amazing.
I would love to see it. Maybe one day. So please definitely share it. And I wonder, how does it feel to live in a city where there is not a single McDonald's?
Yeah, we don't have any McDonald's. I'm surrounded by other small towns. To get to the next McDonald's, you have to go to the next town over. And I don't mind it. We have a lot of great local places to eat, locally owned and operated. I frequent the chains myself sometimes, but it's nice to have independent options too. And the lack of a McDonald's kind of contributes to that.
What is your favorite local place to go?
That's an excellent question. There's a lot of good options. I would say probably my go-to would be the ice cream shop that is hand scooped, hand dipped, like dozens of flavors. It's fantastic. It's just nice, especially with a hot summer like we're just finishing up here. Nice to have a great local ice cream shop.
Do you stick with just one flavor or maybe you are experimenting all the time?
No, that's one of the great things about this particular shop is if you order a single, it actually
Mm.
comes with multiple scoops and you can pick more than one flavor. So your single is apparently a double. I don't know how that works math wise, but I'm here for it.
So what flavors are your favorite?
I typically go for something with some chocolate or some coffee flavors to it,
Mm.
and then maybe pair it with something with some nuts or something. Occasionally, I'm in the mood for coconut or cherry or peanut butter or those kinds of things. But you got to start with a solid base.
Where is your love to chocolate from?
Where does anybody's love for chocolate come from? I think it's just ingrained. I've never
In
not loved
jeans.
chocolate. Yeah, and I think though, as a kid, you tend to like anything that's sweet, right? Any kind of candy, any kind of chocolate, it's all good. But I guess as I've grown up, I've decided for me personally, I'm not gonna waste my time or my calories on candy that's fruit flavored or anything like that. Just
Yeah.
doesn't do it for me. So chocolate or nothing.
I feel like it's the sign of getting older because I can relate to it a little because I remember when I was a kid, I was using to love lollipops and all this stuff. And then like at some age, I was like, no, chocolate is the best. So, and I'm not
Yeah.
looking at those other types of candies. So I feel like it's somehow connected with age.
Gum too, right? Like my kids are crazy for gum. It's their favorite thing. And I remember being that way. And it's like, no, I don't need to just constantly chew something.
Yeah, I totally get it. So, Aaron, let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your parents. Who are they?
My parents are Gary and Suzanne, and they live about 45 minutes away from me, so I still see them regularly. But they raised me in a great house. Was homeschooled for a number of years, which was a novelty at the time. Although obviously with the
Mm.
pandemic, lots more people have gravitated toward that. But at the time, it was fairly new. So spent a lot of time around my parents and really enjoy having a strong relationship with them still.
And till what time you were homeschooled?
I think I started in fourth grade
Mm.
and was homeschooled through the end of ninth grade here in the US, and then went back to public high school to finish up.
And what do you think were the benefits of homeschooling?
For me, the benefits were kind of almost similar to working remote on a
Mm.
job, a lot more flexible schedule, a little bit more self-determination in selecting tasks and priorities. For me, it would be an option to finish my household chores in the morning before starting my school day, or perhaps doing it the other way around if that made more sense on any particular day. I also really appreciated not having to always wait for everybody else to finish in a class. It was if I finished my assignment, I could just move on to the next thing and not have to wait for the bell to ring. So it was nice on some days to be able to finish up quickly and move on to the rest of my day.
And were there any minuses of it?
I think that the biggest minus was certainly the potential lack sometimes of socialization.
Mm.
There's again same as working remote. I don't miss my commute. I don't miss the distractions of an office, but at the same time, I sometimes miss the camaraderie of having a team close by. And I think the same was true in a homeschool situation where it was great always being around my brother and my family, but not having peers as close by as might be the case in an actual school setting was sometimes a downside.
So I feel like you were prepared to work remote long before it became a mainstream.
Apparently, I'd never thought about it that way. Actually, the parallels between those two things, but it's pretty effective parallel.
What did you, let's say, what did you learn during homeschooling that you are using currently in your remote setting?
I think a lot of the self-prioritization and self-determination when it comes to selecting what I'm going to work on or what needs to happen first, or even just the ability to persevere on a project or an assignment when I need to figure something out on my own. If somebody else doesn't have the answer, I have to be able to figure that out on my own and use the resources and information available to me to get to that answer. So I think that that ability to just stay self-motivated is one of the things that I possibly learned in homeschooling.
And I wonder, when you were learning at home, was it like your parents were like teachers? So basically you had the same lessons as kids at school, or did they just give you a task and then like, just do it and we'll check it?
A little of both. So they
Mm.
worked with a company that provided curriculum and helped with lesson planning, things like that. So the lessons that were provided for us were part of a
Mm.
larger approach to schooling. So my mom did create lesson plans for us and say these are the things you're going to be working on, or these are the classes you're studying this year, or that sort of thing. But then more on a day-to-day basis, the lesson plan was accessible to me, and I, especially as I got older, would be able to just go in, look at what I was supposed to do that day and get started on it, and utilize my parents as a resource wherever I got stuck or didn't understand something, especially sometimes if there were larger projects or testing situations, things like that, where there needed to be an additional supervisor or overseer involved. But in general, again, especially as I grew up a little bit more, I was largely just kind of running things on my own.
And did you work together with your brother as a team?
Occasionally, but we were about 3 grades apart, so we
Mm.
were often not doing the same things.
Got it. Got it. So let's move a little bit to yourself. So from what age do you remember yourself?
Ooh, that's a deep question. I feel like I have memories occasionally from, 3, 4 years old, that time span, but I would say that there's not any like consistent sense of ongoing memory until a few years after that.
Hmm. Yeah, and what is the first memory of your childhood that comes to your mind right now?
I don't know for sure which of the various memories actually came chronologically first, but one of the first ones that I know was an early one was it was my parents were getting the carpet in the house replaced, and I remember walking outside my bedroom having no idea that the carpet was missing, and then stepping on all those carpet tacks, and having hurting my feet and not understanding what was going on. So that's a pretty early one.
Yeah, I can imagine like sometimes parents do crazy things without telling their children, but yeah. Did you like playing Lego?
Oh my gosh, I still like playing Legos. My kids are both into them, and so it's fun for us all to build together. And about once a year, I actually just have started this in the last couple of years. I'll save up for and purchase one of those really big
Mm.
Lego sets, some of the multiple thousands of pieces, and I'll build it. I'll display it for a year or so, and I'll take it apart and sell it back and buy a different one.
And when you build it, do you always follow the instruction?
Absolutely. No deviation from the Lego instructions.
I'm just when you told that you are playing with the kids and you buying this big set, I like immediately this moments from Lego movie came to my mind when there was like this huge Lego city, and when like it was a kid who were actually playing Legos, and that's exactly how the movie were going on, and then his dad came and like, what are you doing here? So I'm
I think
curious if
it's
you ever had this huge town or something like that.
I think it's both and, not either or. I think Legos can be built and displayed while also being built and played with. And I certainly, went off the books as a kid and just kind of threw all my sets into a single bin, and then used to just build whatever I felt like, and had vehicles and buildings and all kinds of things that we would use as a game. And imagine something really creative. But then as an adult, for me, the joy is in just building the set. That's what I really enjoy, is putting things together. So I think that, when I play with the kids, it's maybe some creative building and encouraging their imagination and that sort of thing. Whereas an adult, I just like to build a really cool thing and then look at it. So
And what about your kids? Do they like following the instruction or use their imagination?
So my daughter is 10, and she likes to build the set and then leave it put together and then
Mm-hmm.
use it the same way she might use a dollhouse or something like that, just play with it. My son likes to build things. He's 7, and he likes to, he's kind of engineering minded. He likes to build things and really understand how they went together, really follow the instructions specifically. He'll play with it too, but he's a little bit more like me, and then he likes to build and take apart and build something else, then take that apart and build the next thing. And so that's it's fun to see the different styles at work.
Yeah, it's so fun. I'm asking because like I talked to many different people who played Lego and all the stuff, and there are, I would say, two categories of people. First category always follow the instruction and play with it. Another category just once follow the instructions and like break it immediately and then do something on their own. And I'm always like what, like how are people created, all this stuff? Like what what is something behind? Why do they do it? And it's fun because for me, I feel like I'm totally different with my son because I bought him a lot of Lego sets, and it was always more about following the instruction and always building, stuff and playing with it exactly how it is. And if something broken, like, oh my God, it's broken, and not playing anymore, not trying
Right.
to restore it, but like, okay, it's broken, I won't use it. And for me, it was like totally different because I was like, I definitely built it one time, and then who cares? Like
Exactly.
it was like always, this imagination and interesting journey. And also, you wrote that your road trips were a staple of your childhood. So tell me more about road trips.
We drove a lot of different places. As a child, I lived in a couple of different places. I was originally born in Denver, Colorado. I lived for a while in Kentucky, and so being state, and now I'm in Minnesota, and so it's kind of three distinct points on the U.S. map, which gave us a lot of ways to springboard off in a number of different directions, and so the classic American road trip in the minivan or the station wagon. We went lots of different places, and whether it was theme parks or national parks, or my dad loved Civil War battlefields, just visiting family or friends. We were always on the road every summer, it felt like.
Did you have planned road trip, or it was like, okay, we are leaving today, right now, take your stuff?
No, my parents were planners. We always had a destination in mind. We knew exactly where we would be staying every single night, what we were doing each particular day. Everything was planned out.
Yeah, I feel like it's easier, like there is less stress when you plan things out, and you know what to do, how to deal with this. And what about you? Are you a planner?
Especially with travel. Yeah, I am. I do. It's funny. I think even everybody who's a planner has areas where they don't plan as well as maybe other people do. And so between my wife and I, we each have distinct areas where we really like to plan things out, and then other areas where we're a little bit more, fly by the seat of the pants. And that's, for me, I'm a little bit more flexible, more comfortable, just kind of having a loose framework for things and then making things up as I go along within that. But especially when it comes to taking a trip, it's pretty well planned out.
And as you grew up, what does a family trip mean for you right now?
I think there's a lot of value, especially now having kids of my own, in building a sense of shared family culture and memories. Even if I don't remember all the details of every trip I've ever taken, and even if I know that my kids won't, they will remember that the trips happened, that we did something together, we went somewhere together, we saw or discovered something new, and that to me is incredibly important. So I think that there's a lot of things you can give to your kids or create for your family, but a sense of the world and what's out there beyond your own backyard is one of the biggest and best things that you can do.
And how your kids feel about those trips?
They always look forward to it. They make, by the time we announce that we're actually taking a trip, which for the sake of all our sanity, we wait until just a few months before the trip to let them know the trip is actually happening. But they'll make a paper chain and they'll tear off a strip every single day and count down the days until we leave. As they're getting older, we try to involve them in the planning process, find out, well, what do you want to go see? What things would be important to you? Would this be interesting or not? And really make sure that they feel like it's something that they have some ownership of too.
Do you take a lot of photos and videos?
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely enjoy taking pictures.
Do you ever print them out?
We used to. I don't feel like we do that as much anymore. I mean, people in general don't do that as much, but I grew up in an era where, you had your 24 pictures on a roll of film and you'd take your pictures on your trip and you wouldn't even know if they were good for weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And then like one is with sunlight, another is dark, and then the third is somewhere like taking their head and like covering camera with their fingers, and like one or two of those are okay-ish.
Yeah, I we're a bit spoiled now in the ability to know whether a photo was good right away and be able to retake it. And ironically, I think the having them all so accessible on our phones or our computers means we don't print them out as much. Photography in general is better than it's ever been, and people just keep it on a screen instead of printing it out and putting it on the wall. I'll have to think about that and maybe fix that.
How many shots do you usually take
on a trip?
I mean, on one situation, like if you are posing and like,
oh, how many times do I click the button?
Yeah.
I mean, like 2 or 3 or 4, maybe, especially if it's my kids and they're not necessarily always looking at the camera at the same time, or they're making a goofy face instead of smiling like I asked them to.
And how to
may need several times.
How to choose the best one? Because I'm asking because sometimes when you do 3 or 4 photos, they are very similar. How to choose the best one? And do you always keep all those 3 or 4 photos, or do you choose only one?
I usually try to keep it pared down just for the sake of storage space. If I'm choosing a photo of a person, it will be based on just how good does everybody look? Is everybody smiling well? Are the poses good? Does it look natural and casual? That sort of thing. If it's of a landscape or something like that, it's much more about the framing and the composition of the photo. Do I like the balance of items in there? Is the lighting good? Did I get the exposure better on one versus another? That sort of thing.
Do you have a background in photography?
No, I've just messed around with it long enough that I like to have a certain level of quality with things. At least if I'm trying to get a good photo of something, there's plenty of times it's just a snapshot and that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder, what is your favorite place to go?
It's always such a hard question. Because so I'm one of those people who likes I really like mountains and forests, but I
Mm,
also like the beach.
mm.
I also really like riding rides. So it's hard to say. I mean, I've been to Disney World several times, and that's a lot of fun. But at the same time, the Canadian Rockies in Banff National Park was incredible. Um, I it's there's several different trips that I could point to that I would absolutely go again if I could,
Mhm, mhm.
just because the destination was so worthwhile.
Are you going to the same places from time to time, or do you always try to find the new one?
Both. Sometimes we'll revisit a place if, I mean, I mentioned Disney World. We're a Disney fan family, so that one's fun sometimes to go multiple times as the kids age and they can appreciate it differently, or as things change at the destination. That makes it worthwhile to revisit. In some cases, we'll revisit a place if maybe it was someplace my wife and I went before we had kids, and now we
Mm.
want to take them there and show it to them too. Or if we feel like we really liked a place but didn't see all there was to see there, we'll go back. But we do like to keep discovering new places too.
Why do you want to visit all the US states?
It just feels like a fun checkbox to have checked. Part of that comes from that road trip upbringing. It would be fairly common to visit 6 or 8 states in one trip, depending on where we were going. And so I'm at a point where I only have 7 states left that I haven't visited, and now it just sort of feels like something I should do is to get all the rest of them. But no plans specifically for how I'm going to go about doing that.
I've recently seen a post or something on Instagram and Brian Oblinger like checked. I visited all the US states and I was like, why do people from the US want to visit all states? Like, is it some kind of like national thing that I need to go everywhere? So I'm always curious like why it happens. And um, I wonder, so you've been at 7. So what is the next one you'd like to go?
So to answer your previous question, I think too one of the reasons people like to visit all of the states is they're also different. They have their own culture, their own landscape, their own uh, characteristic food, things like that.
Mm,
There's always something different in each state, and so I think that that's part of it as well. There are certain states that are of more interest than others, potentially, just because of what's there or what's not. But for me, there's just areas of the country I haven't been. There are 6 states in New England, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, that I could do in a single trip. That's 6 of my, I guess it's 8 states I haven't visited yet, because I also
mm.
have Mississippi and Alaska, or the other ones. So I think it would just be great to see that part of the country. Same thing with Alaska. Having visited a lot of other places, haven't visited anywhere quite like that. So that's part of the draw.
And also it feels like, when you are in the US, you have like the whole world in one country. So basically people from Europe trying to go to different European countries, but they're super small and like the whole Europe looks like a small part of the US and you can go anywhere. You can go to mountains, you can go to the ocean, you can go to Alaska, so you can do all those things. And yeah, I feel like it's really very interesting. And I'm curious, what is something else? What is the next big goal you'd like to accomplish? I don't know, in the nearest time or during the lifetime?
Beyond travel, or are we branching out into something a lot larger now? Um, Goodness, so you asked earlier if I was a planner, and this is one area where I don't do a great job planning, is that long-term forecasting for my life. And I think part of that is because I feel like every time I've done something like that, life has a surprise for me.
Exactly.
And so I try to just hold those kinds of plans really loosely and just trust that the trajectory I'm on now, if I make wise and intelligent decisions, I'll keep heading in the direction that I ultimately want to be. I care more about the journey than the destination sometimes. And my focus really is on, raising great kids and having a great family and providing well for them, and enabling the things that we value in the future. So whether that's college for my kids or future travel destinations or things like that, that's more my focus than really like targeting, um, I want to be a CEO someday or something like that. I don't really make a lot of those kinds of plans, unfortunately. Maybe that's a shortcoming. I don't know, but
Who do you want to be in 5 years? All those
right.
questions. Yeah, totally crazy. I've never like I think that the best answer that I've ever heard, I want to be the CEO of the company or something like that. When you get asked those questions during the interviews, people like, hmm. It's fun. I wonder, so you have two kids. So who is a bad cop and a good cop? Your or your wife? Who is who?
It It totally depends on which kid and what they did. I
So you
think
have
that
different areas of responsibilities, I guess.
maybe, and just kind of different. I mean, we're a pretty tight knit family, but I think that I tend to be less patient with my son, and my wife
Mm.
tends to be less patient with our daughter. And I don't know why that is. That's for some other psychologist to figure out. But we I think that's just kind of how it goes. But we balance each other out really well, and have just a really close relationship, each of us, with both our kids, which is, I think, the most important thing. I think, we've got a son who likes to push boundaries, and our daughter likes to very much follow the rules, but tends to be a little bit more private sometimes.
Mm.
So it's always a balance of trying to check on who's doing what when, and just making sure that they know that they can always come to us if they need to talk about something, and that even if we do have to correct them on something that they shouldn't have done, that they know we're doing that with love and out of, ultimate goal of helping them become who they want to be, and not make choices they'll regret.
Does it mean that your son usually goes to your wife and your daughter to you?
He has, in many cases, walked straight past me while I've been just sitting reading a book to go ask a question or a favor of my wife, and we both are like, "Hey, dude, you have two parents. I'm here to help."
It's so fun. Yeah, yeah, and I totally get it because but I have only one kid and it's a boy and from time to time like I'm thinking about from my perspective like as a man should be and then like yeah, I feel like I'm getting stricter sometimes and I
Yeah.
totally understand what you're talking about because like it's harder to kind of like think from the daughter's perspective, but it's easier to think from the son's perspective, kinda, like the same gender and all this stuff. So,
And I
and
heard someone say one time that sons are harder when they're younger and daughters are harder when they're older. And so maybe we're working toward a flip flop here. But he's just full of energy, which is awesome. He should be. He's just still learning how to control that.
what is the most active thing you've ever done with your son?
The most active thing. Um, I think so. He likes when what he calls when we play crazy, and that's basically some mix of wrestling and tickling and me just like flipping him all over the place and carrying him around or tossing him on the couch or things like that. He likes to really get rambunctious, and so we do that fairly frequently.
Did you ever hurt him accidentally during those times?
No, I don't think so. I mean, certainly not in any way that he felt was out of bounds. I think we both tend to expect that there will be some bumps along the way. That's just kind of the nature of it. But usually we just get back up laughing, and that's kind of how it goes. It's anybody who's grown up with a brother or in a household with a that had that kind of active lifestyle to it. You know what it's like.
But it was just easier when your brother hurt you or you hurt your brother. It's always parents who you can go to. But if like it's your dad, like to mom, maybe, but like it's not that equal, you know.
There's a and it's an interesting exercise as he gets bigger because he's finding that he has
Mm.
he has more strength, more power to his actions, and so I have to I use those as opportunities to help him understand how he needs to also be gentle and careful, just as I try to be. Certainly accidents happen, but he needs to learn how to you know use his strength responsibly. It's the Spider-Man thing, right?
Do you use Spider-Man or is there any, I don't know, maybe martial arts you use to teach him about that?
I mean, Spider-Man's a great example because we've been getting into some Spider-Man in our house. He's been reading some Spider-Man comics, and we've been watching Spider-Man together, and so it's just a great opportunity. I think also, he tends to injure himself more
Mm.
than any other source of injury, just by running around the house and bumping into things, and just having to just continuously say, hey, dude, you probably shouldn't run in the house. We talk about that sometimes, right? Let's not run into things. I don't want you to hurt yourself. You're big now, and that can cause damage to you or to other things. So let's slow down and use our strength wisely, right? So things like that.
Talking about Spider-Man, there are so many movies and cartoon and comics. So what is your favorite one?
My favorite Spider-Man movie or comic?
Anything
Any
related to
of them?
Spider-Man?
Yeah, I honestly think that Into the Spider-Verse from a few
Mm.
years ago was so well done, and just had that right mix of just a creative comic book style animation and a fun story and great characters. And I mean, there have been some really good Spider-Man movies, but that one for me is just kind of right there at the top of the list.
I feel like a great soundtrack.
Yes, it did have a good soundtrack.
I feel like after seeing it, I was listening to it for a week or a few weeks or even months. So I feel like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, or yeah, you just get that song stuck in your head, and it was like, where did that come from? Oh, right, that movie.
Yeah, yeah. You talked about geeky stuff. So give me an example of weird geeky stuff you like.
I think one example that I think is pretty niche, or niche, as a lot of people would say, is behind me here, the Mist, the video game series from the 90s. And that to me was at the time super immersive. It deals with the storytelling power of books, and it was puzzle solving and beautiful graphics and all kinds of things. So that has continued to be a relevant property for me throughout my life, and one that I have bought and rebought again, that game, as they continue to make it new and
Hmm.
update the graphics and all kinds of things. So that's one that I keep close, one of the books from the game, just because it's just meaningful to me.
Yeah, it's connected to like growing up, and I feel like some people are fans of Zelda, some people are fans of Quake or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So I totally understand it. Was it your only game, let's say, you liked the most, or were there any more?
I've played video games throughout my life, and a lot of different ones have been impactful in different ways over the years. But I think Myst is just so different from so many other games that I've played, and the lore of the world that the game developers created was just so, again, so unique, so immersive, so tied to several other things that I loved. Again, puzzle solving, reading, creativity and imagination to create worlds kind of in your own mind, and those kinds of things. So it has perpetuated throughout my life, whereas other games that maybe I played a long time ago are still fond memories, but are not ones that I continue to seek out and replay.
Got it. And talking about reading, I saw this video about "Twas the Night Before Planning." It was such an amazing one, when you were reading the story about Santa Claus and elves that are having troubles with planning and stuff. So I wonder, do you read books to your children?
Absolutely, I do. Yeah, the video you're talking about was something I created as part of the Anaplan community team on a previous role, and it was just a parody of "Twas the Night Before Christmas" that was really focusing on our product and our customers and that sort of thing. So we turned it into a fun holiday present for our community and got some laughs. But I do enjoy reading, I enjoy writing, and it's something that I, especially for my kids, again, is something I invest both time and effort into for them. Read things to both of them, like the Chronicles of Narnia or The Hobbit. Currently working on the last Harry Potter book with my daughter, things like that, and just really enjoy spending that time with them and helping them discover, again, some of the worlds that activated my imagination when I was their age.
Do you read the same books with your daughter and son, or do you read different books with them, with each of them?
The same books, but at different times when they're each ready for them. So I read all 7 Narnia books to my daughter when she was my son's age, and now I'm going through them with him.
Got it. Yeah, totally makes sense, because sometimes you don't understand. And is there a book that that goes with you through whole your life, and you are rereading it from time to time in different ages?
Jurassic Park. Don't even have to think about that one. That one I read when I was 12. It was 1993. The movie was coming out. It was my first adult novel that I had read. And it was, it just has stuck with me throughout my life. I've owned probably 3 or 4 different copies of that book at different times because I wear them out. And anytime I'm in a reading slump, I'll read Jurassic Park.
It's so fun because I don't remember when the movie came out, but I didn't know at that age that there are some movies based on books. I was thinking oh, it's just a movie, and all the stuff.
Right.
And then when I get older, so from your perspective, what is better, the book or the movie?
That's one of the great things about Jurassic Park, is because they're both excellent. The movie is different enough from the book that it doesn't feel like it was a bad adaptation, but it has enough in common with the book that it still feels like the same story. I actually, just a few weeks ago, somehow it's the 30th anniversary this year of the release of the movie.
Wow.
And so a few weeks ago, our local theater was showing an updated 4K 3D version of the film. And I absolutely went. And it was still just as good now as it was 30 years ago when I last saw it in a theater.
Wow.
And so I very much enjoy both of them.
Oh, wow, it's so interesting, First of all, I didn't even know that there is a book behind, but now I have something new to crave for, It's like this remastered 4K 3D movie. So I hope it will get here someday.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we'll see. And where's your love of funnel cake from?
I'm not even sure I would say I have a love of funnel cake. It's tasty. It's a good thing to get when you go to a state fair or something like that. Yeah, I wouldn't say that I have a love of funnel cake. Just an occasional taste for it under the right circumstances.
And do you have some kind of love to any kind of cake?
I like cake. I do have a sweet tooth. I would probably prefer a pie or a donut or brownie. But cake is great. I enjoy making cake for people's birthdays and things like that.
What was the best cake you've ever made for somebody's birthday?
The cake that I make regularly is a carrot cake. It's my grandmother's recipe.
Mm.
It's usually carrot cake when you get it at the store or have it at a restaurant or something like that. It's got raisins in it, and I like raisins, but not in carrot cake. And it's also usually got an icing that's just too sweet. And the recipe that I have has a like a buttercream, or I'm sorry, a cream cheese
Mhm.
frosting
Mhm.
with pecans in it, and it's just
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Again, it's one that I grew up with, and it's one that I return to regularly and enjoy making, at least for my birthday. Sometimes other people ask for it, but
And you talked about sweetness. So when you find a new recipe of cake or something sweet, do you always follow the recipe and add the same amount of sugar?
yeah, if anything, I actually reduce the amount of sugar just because I think sometimes recipes go a little overboard with that. I think it depends. It depends on the relationship, the ratio of all the other ingredients, and whether I feel like I can get away with that. But frequently, I will reduce the amount of sugar and I'll increase the amount of like cinnamon or spices or vanilla or things like that, other flavorings, just because I think a lot of times things just end up simply tasting sweet, and I actually
Yeah.
want it to
Yeah.
to be more interesting than that.
I asked because, I also find some recipes from time to time and I'm always reducing amount of sugar because I don't know what those people are thinking about, like they like add, I don't know, 3 cups of sugar. Like
Yeah,
really? Like it's a small cake. Like what it will be is like sugar cake. So
right. Yeah, nobody needs all of that, especially if it's got frosting on it.
yeah, totally. So once you said recently, you shared on LinkedIn that you are learning to consciously say no to things. So what is something you've recently said no to?
That's a good question. You might have to edit this for time because I am having trouble thinking about it. But I think it's more in the little things on the day-to-day basis. It's not necessarily big things. It's more just recognizing that it's okay to turn down an invitation from a friend, for example, or things like that. It doesn't. I don't have to take every opportunity that comes to me, whether it's a social opportunity or an opportunity to volunteer or things like that. It could be anything, but just it's okay to not have to do everything. I think the context of the post that you're referencing, I was talking about how much information we have today, how much
Yeah,
data we get from
crazy.
our fitness trackers or our phones or our computers, or just everything is monitored and fed back to us so that we can analyze it and understand it. And sometimes I think we just get lost in that. Similarly, there's just so much content now, so many amazing books, podcasts, movies, TV shows, and you can't possibly keep up with all of them. And so some of these things that I've learned that I have to just consciously say, like, nope, that's one I'm going to miss. And it's okay if I'm not part of the conversation. So Game of Thrones, never watched any Game of Thrones. That's an example.
Exactly. Very, very same here. But I know this phrase that the winter is coming. So
Yes, that
I feel like
I know
it's
the
enough.
memes, right?
It's
Yeah,
enough, like the winter is coming. Everyone like, yeah, we know what
yeah,
you are talking about.
right.
Even though those people didn't see it too.
Maybe that's a theory we can work on. I bet not as many people actually watch the show as say they watch the show.
Because you can't say that you didn't see it, that you didn't watch because you want to be the school kids, and all this stuff. And I wonder, do you ever go out without a tracker, without a fitness tracker?
I do, yeah. So I'm a runner, and I only just started using a fitness tracker in the last few years.
Hmm.
And then earlier this year, the one I had been using was discontinued, and they totally bricked the device in general, so it wasn't even operable anymore. And I took several months just to regroup and figure out what else I was going to do instead. And it was kind of refreshing just to run without worrying about what it felt like or what it was doing or how I was comparing to my previous runs. So I think there's a balance between having all that data and utilizing it to improve, but also just kind of enjoying the journey, like I said before.
But also you shared that you never been competitive in races or events. So I wonder, what do you use this tracker for?
I'm competitive with myself. I always like to make sure that I'm improving over my previous time or my previous distance or things like that. Which the more years I spend running, the less I'm able to do that, just because I'm racking up hundreds of runs over these many years, and at that point, it's very difficult to always be improving. So I kind of have stopped worrying as much about that. I still have a zone that I like to be
Mm.
in. And so I do monitor that. But I've started to take some of the pressure off myself to be constantly getting better, especially because I don't compete in races. What's the point in continuing to try to be my absolute fastest? The point is to enjoy running and to stay healthy. So that's becoming more my focus.
I wonder, how did you get this mindset of not competing with others, but with yourself?
The mindset of not competing with others came because I never actually placed in any of the races that I was running. It's impossible for me to compete with the 15-year-old cross country runner who runs 16 miles every day of his life. So I even in my own age group though, they parse it out into different age groups, and I've never placed even in my own age group, no matter what age group that has been, and it keeps changing. So that's one of those things where it's like, well, if I'm not actually going to be able to earn a medal or a ribbon, or actually, beat enough other people to place in this, then the only other person that I really have to compete against is myself. And am I doing better than my previous best? Then, or at least am I maintaining a level of quality that I'm satisfied with? Then that's enough.
Do you have this mindset only about running, or maybe in general about life?
I think it largely is applicable to running. I think though that I do apply it in other areas too, whether just with my general health and well-being, or maybe my happiness and my emotional well-being. Certainly, with raising my kids and making sure that there's always this forward progress. I think there, so I took the Strengths Finder assessment several years back, and one of mine was maximizer, and that idea of just improving, taking something and making it better. And I think that that's always what I'm looking to do, in as many areas as possible, is just how can we take that to the next step or the next level, even if that's a community program I'm working on or something like that. And I think that that's just a good mindset for people to have in general, is that in not being content with stagnating. I think contentment is always a good thing to have, but that looking to always, be better than you were yesterday is also good. So that balance between contentment and improvement.
Isn't that hard?
Yeah, it depends on the day, but that's where having grace with yourself comes in as well. Like recognizing that, everybody has an off day or an off season, and that there's an ebb and flow to everything in life. And just, we're all still human, and learning not to be too hard on yourself, for the times where you're not at your best, because you can't always be.
How do you recognize if you're having a bad day?
I like to think I'm fairly in tune with my emotions, and recognize if, for whatever reason, a poor night of sleep or whatever it might have been, that just something is affecting me that particular day. And I even try to be upfront with it with other people, like, yeah, just kind of grumpy today or something like that. But just being aware of my own emotions in a particular situation, and making accommodations for that, and also trying to do what I can do to mitigate that, whether it's cutting back on coffee that day, or taking a nap in the afternoon, or going for a walk or a run to just kind of get some fresh headspace. Those kinds of things that help.
What is the hardest part of Tough Mudder?
I do enjoy running the Tough Mudder. It's something I've done annually since 2014, and it's something that I enjoy doing with friends. And I think the toughest part is cleaning up afterwards. Those that mud is sticky sometimes. Honestly, the event itself is a fairly accessible event, as long as you can put in the distance. The actual obstacles are more psychological in nature than they are physical, and I think that so much fun to have that sense of accomplishment at the end of 3 hours on the course, that you and your team did something that most people would not feel like is a sane thing to do. um but it's something that we've been enjoying doing for a while now.
What is the story behind your first race?
First race. So my very first 5K as a runner was something that I got into. I was not an active person growing up. I'm not very tall. I'd never done a lot of the sports that most of the other kids in my town played. Had gone to high school in a small town, so it was football, basketball, hockey, wrestling, and I was not made for any of those things. And so as an adult, somebody had told me about the Couch to 5K running program, where it takes you from a non-runner to being able to run a 5K and complete it. No guarantees about pace or time or anything like that, but you can at least complete it. And I thought, well, that sounds like something I could at least try. And so I did, and that's when I fell in love with running. When I realized that, oh, I could be active, I could be athletic, just need to find the right thing. And so for me, that was a really big turning point in my life. But that first 5K was hard, and it was not anything, not anywhere near my greatest pace of all time, but it was something that several of us from my church had done together. We kind of went through the Couch to 5K program together, and so we ran that race together, and it was that community sense, that camaraderie that we had going through it was really meaningful. So even though it's not ultimately a very memorable race, it was a memorable time of my life.
And why did you decide to try Tough Mudder?
There were several of my friends and I who were out for one of my friends' 30th birthday parties, and it just came up like, hey, we're all turning 30 or whatever. What if we did something crazy? And somebody registered and said, okay, I'm in. Who else? And so there were 6 of us that did it that year, and I've done it every year ever since.
The rest is history. Oh, you'll celebrate 10 years next year.
Yeah, 2020 there wasn't one, so this year should have been my 10th Tough Mudder, but
right.
there wasn't one in 2020. So yeah, next year will actually be my 10th one.
Do you already have a plan to celebrate it somehow with your friends?
That's a good question. I'm already registered for it, so at least I know it's happening. But I should make some kind of plan to mark the moment.
Do you usually celebrate some milestones in your life?
Yeah, I think, if I, when I get a new job, my family and I'll go out to dinner, or, anniversaries or birthdays, things like that. We try to do something special or fun, whether it's an anniversary trip, or again, it's just a birthday party of some kind, either just with our family or with friends. I think it's important to recognize those things, and pay attention to the fact that, that you are, I know, continuing on your journey of life, and there are milestones along the way, and marking those is a meaningful thing to do. So we do take time for it.
I feel like sometimes it's easy to forget about that, because life is so fast, and like just another step, like you're receiving, like sometimes people are struggling so hard to reach something, and then we're reached like, okay, everyone can do it, but it's not. So yeah, it's always good to celebrate and, like praise yourself and make sure that you are continue doing, and that you are receiving these great results, or even normal results, but it's still results. So
yeah, I think, early on, I noticed very quickly that the adults in my life were always they were always looking at whatever they thought was the next thing for me. You graduate high school, where are you going to college? You graduate college, well, when are you getting married? When you get married, when are you having kids? And you have one kid, when are you having another kid? And it's always this thing is like, hey, wait a minute, can't we just enjoy where we are? And that I think that taking that time to stop and pause, and recognize where you're at and where you've been, instead of constantly looking to the next thing, is a really important thing to do.
I feel like that's just how parents are, they always pushing like to another. And I wonder why. I feel like that's because they were raised that way. And do you push your kids too?
think every parent pushes their kids to a degree, because I think in a lot of cases kids don't always challenge themselves,
Hmm.
and they don't know to they don't know to apply that extra level of effort or work toward accomplishing something that needs to be taught and trained in a lot of kids. And so it's again, it's a balance between wanting to push, because I don't want them to feel too much pressure to be something they're not, or to overachieve necessarily, or things like that. I want them to be who they were made to be. But at the same time, in order for them to get there, they need that encouragement. They need that support, to recognize that, yeah, hard work is a thing that happens in life, and we need to not run away from it, but lean into it and recognize that some things are worth the hard work, even though it may not feel pleasant at the time. The result afterward validates all of it. So that's kind of where we are right now, where we ask them to do their chores, and dad,
I totally
hey,
hear that.
you're
I
going to appreciate this one day.
Every time I'm doing homework with my kid, I have this fight. No, homework again. And I was like, yes, again, it's next
Yes,
day.
again,
It's cool. Like
it's
homework
important.
for sure. Like you're doing homework, you're not getting out of it. But it's fun. And I like for me, for my kids, the hardest part is to start. So we can go into
Yeah,
fight, and we can go like, you're grounded if you're not doing the homework and all the stuff. But I noticed that if I just overgo this first few minutes of like not wanting him to do it, then it goes okay. So
yeah.
just these few minutes, and then like we're getting sucked in, we're talking about stuff. I'm telling him stories, and we are already, getting somewhere. So it's
Yeah, we
crazy.
we have conversations sometimes where I'll say, it's okay to not want to do this. I understand it's less enjoyable than the book you were reading or the game you were playing, but it's still important. So feel your feelings, and now let's get it done.
Who is your favorite Star Wars character?
Han Solo.
Why?
I like the fact that he's a little bit scoundrelly.
Hmm.
He's a bit sarcastic, and I tend to be that way. Um, he's really resourceful. He's always there in a pinch. Um, and maybe I just like Harrison Ford in general, but Han Solo is a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, it's fun, but when I had a Star Wars book, it was already this actor already on this book. So it was not like, the previous edition without him, but it was always, even when I was reading a book without seeing a movie, it was already connected with him. And when I saw a movie, I like, oh, I understand. I understand why.
Yeah,
And for you, what was
suddenly makes
first, the
sense.
movie or the book?
I grew up watching Star Wars. I mean, in the era where our copy of the movie at home, my parents had recorded off some TV movie. It had commercials in it. We had to fast forward through. I saw the same commercials so many times because it was on this recorded VHS copy of Star Wars, and it had been edited too. So there were scenes that later, when I got a legitimate copy, I was like, I've never seen that scene. that was that had been edited out of the part that I saw. So it was, yeah. I For me, it's always the movies for Star Wars.
When I was preparing for this conversation, I went through your LinkedIn posts and anything that I could only find on the internet. And I have this internal feeling that you are a very thoughtful person. At least I have this feeling. So, have you ever thought about your purpose in life?
I have, yeah. So let's see. I think in terms of like an overall like mission statement, I'm not sure that I've got it always boiled down to something like that. But for me, so I'm a person of faith. I'm a Christian, and I believe a lot in that, and so that influences a lot of how I go about doing what I do and why I do it. For me, I think that being as I don't know, just as helpful a person as I can be, as kind and as loving as possible, always doing what I can to support others and give back, give to others. I think all these things are really important to me, and I think that they influence how I do community as well, because I've got a very people centered approach to a lot of what I do. My career isn't based off of the desire for achievement or big salary or anything like that. It's how can I help people, and how
Yeah.
can I ultimately like leave a mark that's bigger than myself on the world around me, that lasts beyond me, and that obviously influences my parenting and where I volunteer and spend my time, and those kinds of things. So I think it's all kind of wrapped up in my worldview there.
Yeah, and I feel like the more you give, the more you talk to people, the more you learn. And it's always like this continuous cycle. And yeah, and I know that Christianity sometimes may be hard if go like really rule by rule by rule. So do you always follow all rules of Christianity?
I think that's the great thing about really understanding that faith is, the perception of it is that it's very rule based, and ultimately, a solid understanding of it is that it's much more grace based. There's certainly a moral component to it, things that are right or wrong, but our approach to living that way is based out of a desire, based out of gratitude for what we've received from God in that, and not to get all religious, but you asked, what we've received in being saved, and so it's less about like, well, to be a good Christian, I have to follow all these rules. It's more about I'm going to choose to live the best way I can because I've received so much, and in gratitude for that to the person who has done that for me, I'm going to do the best I can. So I think it's very freeing to think about it from that perspective rather than an enormous checklist of rules.
And I would also add that it's something in your mind and heart, because I feel like there is a huge social pressure out there because everyone understands religion and all the stuff like themselves. And it's like, it's not that you have to be and feel about it as others, because it's always your
Yeah.
own way to it. And yeah, I totally get what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's the difficult thing for anybody who believes anything really strongly, is that everybody else around you maybe has a different perception of what that is that you believe, whether it's your political ideology or your faith system or your culture or something like that. Somebody else always has a different perspective of that because of a lived experience with that thing some other way, with possibly somebody else who didn't represent it the way you would want them to. And so you always encounter people who have maybe a bias or a prejudice, and frequently a very legitimate one. And I just, I know that there's not always great depictions of Christians out there, and I do my best to counteract that as much as I can.
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of, you can say the same about almost anything, because I can say the same. Like, I feel like it's not the great thoughts about Ukrainians out there, or it's not the great thoughts about white men out there and all the
Yeah.
stuff. So it always depends. And Aaron, I really wish to have the sky as a limit to our conversation, but time is a limit. So let's jump to the rapid fire questions. Are you
Oh,
ready?
we haven't had rapid fire yet.
I don't know. It was deep fire. Now it's
Sounds
rapid fire.
good. Let's do it.
Trivia or Tough Mudder?
Trivia.
Cook or eat?
Eat.
What are your favorite color and song?
Color would be blue or black. Favorite song? I don't have one. There's too many. They come and go.
What is something? What is your favorite song of the day or of the week?
Oh gosh. Let's just say AC/DC Thunderstruck, because that was in my head yesterday.
Got it. If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
I'd love to fly.
Who do you learn from in the community world? Name just one person.
Just one person. That changes a lot too, but I would say I've learned a lot from Max Pete lately.
And who should I reach out and have this community live conversation with? Name two people.
If you haven't talked to them yet, I would recommend Nicola Earl. And man, That's such a good question. I don't even know who all you've talked to. So, um,
Doesn't matter. It's like, who do you think about?
well, let's just say Max Pete then. I'm sure you've already talked to him, but if I'm going to give his answer as somebody who has influenced me, then I've got to recommend him that you talk to him.
Got it. Is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
No, I think we covered a great range of topics, and I can't even think of one that we didn't get to.
I felt like you will say you didn't ask me about trivia. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't ask about trivia.
You didn't, and that's okay. You didn't ask me about my favorite pizza topping either, but there's so many things we could have gotten into.
Okay, so let's review at least what is your favorite pizza topping.
Pepperoni, hands down.
Got it. Aaron, I wanted, like, I met you first at the CMX community, I guess. And then, as Taylor once said, we were friend flirting here and there, jumping on some meetings from time to time. And as you mentioned, never really had this quality, let's say, one-on-one conversation. But I feel like today you just covered my curiosity, not for 100% sure. It's even not, I don't know, 60%, but at least at 52, totally. So
More than half. We're winning.
yeah, more than half, like, because I totally, like, because when I was reading stuff, when I was preparing for this conversation, and when I saw you out there in the community world, I had one thought, and then you just proved some of them, and I just understand that you are even better than I even thought. So
Well, that's very kind of you. Maybe I've fooled you.
we never know. We never know.
We
But
never
it's
know.
also the beauty, it's also the beauty of it. So yeah, thank you very much for having this fun, nice, and interesting conversation, and for being so open here.
Thank you. Thank you for the thoughtful questions. This was a great time. Can't even say it, but
I totally understand, from time to time I have the same stuff and I have to repeat things, and it's it's the perfection of imperfection.
yes.
And yeah,
Yep.
thank you very much, and see you in the community world.
See you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button on 5 stars and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.